Lovely. So let's make a start, nice and gently, nice and easy as you start up. I think we'll start up today with the tapping exercise that we do, either at the beginning or at the end. Just rubbing your hands together. You can feel the palms and things get a little bit warm, and then tapping lightly over your face, pads of your fingers. Working up over your head with your fingers or palms of your hands. Down to one shoulder. As you do this, just try and get a sense for how this feels. Do you tap and feel the vibration in the muscles going down the inside of your arm, up the outside? And then onto the other shoulder, your arm. Then onto your back. So lightly over the lower part of your back. That's really covered as much of your back as you can do comfortably. Working out to your hips, going around your hips. And your legs. And coming up onto your body. And the upper part of your chest. Standing, feet hip width apart, so below your hips. So you feel the support of your legs. And just begin to turn in the center part of your body, the area between hips and waist. So the first stage, if you like to think of it like that, or the first thing that we look to do in Tai Chi when we start up, is just to bring our attention into our body. This is one of the ways that we can understand the phrase first in the mind that is often used in Tai Chi. And regardless of how long you've been doing this, it's always a sort of task, a gentle task of bringing your attention into your body, noticing whatever there is to notice in the first instance, nothing very specific, but as a way of quieting your attention and focusing your attention here into your body. So you may notice the rhythm of the movement, weight of your arms, may notice that maybe your legs are aching a bit. And it's all just very much to give this sense of a settled attention. One of the things that is very noticeable, I think, for pretty much all of us when we start to do that is that attention doesn't stay still, it drifts away and it comes back. And we don't fight against that, but we do look to bring our attention back. Think of a boat that's anchored on the seabed. It doesn't stay perfectly still, but it doesn't drift onto the rocks either. So we start to get a better sense of how we feel, of what's happening physically, energetically within our bodies. Start to notice maybe you feel a bit tired, or maybe you've got a busy day and that's pushing on your mind. Gradually, those kind of things drift into the background. And also a sense of our immediate environment, where we are in the room, and so on. So, sense of something we can call centering. And maybe specific parts of the body. And this, as we begin to get that sense of settling, then in Tai Chi, we would bring our attention very specifically to our feet, our legs, center of our body, so that we make a particular deliberate intention to include parts of the body that maybe we habitually overlook. We tend to be very orientated towards upper body, towards arms and hands. But building up an overall sense of ourselves, inner and outer. There's a kind of outline picture that we're gradually going to fill in. This means that we can begin to bring a deliberate intention into the movements. That intention, that aspect of mind, is a very key part of Tai Chi. We're really thinking about three areas, three aspects that we want to bring together, which is the physical awareness, of course. That aspect of mind, and I've already pointed out, that can be a bit fickle. Again, if you've got that busy day or you had a busy weekend, that can be more distracting. So sometimes it might be more difficult just to get that sense of being settled. Nothing is preset in these things. And the third element is the movement itself, the flow, the energy, however we care to conceptualize, however we care to label these things. And one of the outcomes that we're looking for, one of the aspirations, is that those three things that I've described separately actually aren't separate, that they support each other equally. We may choose to focus on one aspect or another, but by doing that, we also engage in the others. If we choose to bring our attention to posture, we want to sort out that sense of maybe our hips not being in line or something like that, then that also involves our attention, intention, and it also has an impact on the movement, the energy. It may be the sense that if you're used to doing Tai Chi, you haven't quite got that sense of movement yet. So the awareness of movement, of energy, may point us at something that's happening in our posture that we want to try and just gently correct. This is always a useful process at the start. It's a very important process, really, at the start of our day. We try and establish that sense of harmony between these three aspects as a foundation for moving into the activities of the day. And this is, I think, one of the great benefits of developing a regular practice. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Tai Chi does get very complicated. Some experience of this, you'll recognize that. But the starting point is really very simple. An exercise like this can offer you a great deal of potential for reflection and for change. It also has the physical benefits of being gently aerobic, warming the body up, warming the muscles up, and so on. Maybe feeling that sense of resonance in the muscles that hopefully you felt with that tapping exercise at the beginning. And that may be a clue for how movement energy connects through the body. Another aspect that begins to build is this sense of our whole body, rather than being sort of like all over the place, as we say, with an arm up here and a leg down there. A sense of wholeness begins to develop. Turning your hands palm out, raise them up a little bit. And then now put one foot forwards, keeping the width of your step. You can see the background between my legs. And just a gentle push from the ground. You're more experienced in this and you're used to doing this exercise, the weight transfer, maybe recognizing that springiness in your legs and the significance of your weight sinking down, the root, the movement, something we'll come back to in a few moments. And then on the other side. And Tai Chi offers us various models, images of how our posture can work, of our structure. I think an overall aim is to create a structure that is supportive, so less need for strain within the body, and a structure that allows movement through our body, including pull of gravity, this major force that actually acts on us. And as I say, there are various ways, and they all have merit, and they all may be appropriate at some point or another. One which is worth thinking about is that we imagine there's a series of platforms through the body. The floor that we stand on is hopefully level, and that means that our feet are on a level, and then when we move up, we get a sense of our hips and our pelvis, and that will be level. There can be slight differences, and if it's that platform, that stage is level, then we could imagine that another one here around about the rib cage, and that rests on the platforms underneath, and then we move up to our shoulders, and again, if the platform underneath are level, there's more chance that will be level, and then our head can just rest on that platform. Right, demonstrate that. I get a pile of books, so I want to create a pile of books, then what I can do is I put the lower one there, then I get another one, and if one of the books happens to be tilted, then everything above that's going to fall off. But if I can get them level, I can build them up level from below, and I can maybe get a board and just rest the ball on there. But again, if one was tilted, the ball would just roll off, and the ball is like your head, so the weight of your head can flow down through your body. You don't have to strain to hold your head in position. If that's a useful image to you, then just apply that and get a sense for how when we find a structure, when we find a way of standing that allows us to release some of the tightness in the body, we get a greater sense of how we're actually supported. When the big muscles of our back and our shoulders are able to release some of the tightness, we realize that we're still upright, we still have a shape and so on. Our legs are supporting us, of course. We want to feel that our back supports the front of our upper body, so try not to put your belly in, tighten your chest, trying to lose some of those habits that we've acquired in our lifetimes. And finally, in a deeper sense, this sense of support from within the body, the skeleton and the surrounding area supports us from within. And there's an interaction. It's not black and white, and certainly with skeleton, it's true to say that it both supports and is supported. So finding a way of just standing with less strain, with less resistance to the pull of gravity, and then just allowing gravity to draw your hips down a little bit, trying to get a sense of release and tightness in the hips and the knees, and then feeling yourself being pushed up. So I'm very much thinking of hips at this point. You don't want to get into a mindset where it's all about bending the knees. Your knees will bend, but be careful with that, don't overdo it. And you'll get to a point where you feel as though your legs are pushing you up. So this is rooting down. When we're able to drop our weight, drop our center of gravity lower, we become more stable. and we're less likely to strain in the upper part of our body. If I were to give you a heavy box, say hold it up above your shoulders very quickly tighten up, whereas if you're holding it down there, they're less likely to do so. So we begin to appreciate that stability and that release and tightness in the body. But also, as we get used to this process of rooting down, the feeling of it, we realize that it's not isolated. It's the start of a movement. We think of our legs being loaded. It's like standing on a trampoline, you drop down and then you get pushed up. The image for that rise in movement, that rise in energy, is of a block of wood that when it's pushed down into water, is then pushed up again, a rising, expanding move. And so the root isn't just about a physical stability, releasing tightness in the body. It's also the initiation of a very important dynamic quality. Our body is pushed up, there's a feeling of expansion, hopefully, particularly in upper part of the body. You may notice it coming up a little bit more through your back and your spine. We have a movement, an energy to build on. So now bringing your arms around as though you're cradling the ball, pushing up, letting that expansion, push your elbows up. That will bring your hands up. Turn your hands over as though there's a ball underneath them and pressing down, as though you're pressing the ball down into water. So again, like the block of wood, that ball will get pushed up, the body will get pushed up. So this exercise is called rooting down because that's its principal feature. The dropping of your center of gravity and the outcome of that, which is this rising, expanding energy. Just trying to build that into a movement that is smooth, that is rhythmic, so that we feel that there's a resonance through our bodies. Be aware that there are parts of your body that are resistance to the movement in one direction or another. Just seeing if you can, particularly as you sink down, just have the intention to get that feeling of softening, of releasing, of tightness in those parts of the body. Using the movement, the downward movement, to once again draw your attention down into your feet and your legs. Noticing subtle changes, patterns of expansion and contraction in your body. You may notice, for instance, as you push up, there's a bit of an expansion in your rib cage. You may even find yourself habitually breathing in at that point. And then as you sink down, the spaces between the ribs may be contracting a little bit. Maybe a feeling of expansion, contraction in the sides of your body. So gradually, this outline picture that I mentioned earlier becomes more detailed, and our attention sinks more deeply in our body. And with that, our intentionality becomes more useful, shall we say. Then sinking down, turning your hands so your fingers point out. Same thing in your hips. But this is a slightly more expansive movement as your arms go out. This is the wild goose. And it illustrates one of the ways that we can begin to focus our intentions through the use of imagery. Images can have a powerful effect on our body. And if the image of the bird in flight is a useful one to you, it evokes maybe a quality of smoothness, of grace, maybe even of power and strength, then just recognizing the potential for those qualities and start to bring about a change in how we're moving. Another very common image in Tai Chi is one that we're moving through water. And this can apply to any of the movements if it's useful to you. When we move in water, we move in a softer way. We tend to quite instinctively loosen a little bit in the joints and the muscles, because we know that if we're stiff and tight in water, it's harder work and we're less likely to float and so on. It also encourages a stronger feel for the movement. So it's a useful image if you can make it work for you. But if an image doesn't work for you, don't feel that you've somehow failed. There's a multitude of images that we use, just as there's a range of different models for our posture. And the important thing is to make use of the ones that are available to you at the time. Maybe investigate some of the others, not with the intention of rejecting them or sticking to them, but because they're useful tools. They're useful at times. There may be times when the platform model is helpful to you, maybe times when it isn't. And then another change, letting your hands drop down, crossing in front of your belly. And this time the movement's called Parting the Clouds. And this lovely sense of just opening up, the feeling we might get on a grey day, the sun suddenly comes out behind the clouds. So a regular practice of Tai Chi helps us to become familiar with these different aspects. They're like tools that we can train ourselves in using. If you have a toolbox with screwdrivers and hammers and saws and so on in it, depending on what you're trying to do and what's appropriate, you might choose a particular tool. Or if you go into your kitchen, you have a drawer with different utensils in. And if we practice using those different utensils, then they're available to us when we need them. So we have this pattern of movement, expanding, contracting, feeling the sinking down through our hips and our legs, loading the legs, providing the energy for the expansion as we push up or are pushed up. And an intentional expansion, we want the body to expand. We want that to move our arms for us. I do one more of these. This is a symmetrical movement. It works evenly all the way through our body. But now, sinking down, and this time focusing on one side of your body, pushing up, letting that move your arm up. At the top of the movement, just winding your arm around and drawing down. The arm drop to its full length, moving your attention to the opposite side of your body and pushing up and going down. Take your time. This is called Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky. So when you finish one side, let your attention move first to the center of your body and then to the opposite side. So not rushing, but aware that we can use our intention to direct that overall movement. It's like if you ride a bike or you drive a car, you pedal or you push down on the accelerator to get the movement, and then you steer the vehicle somehow. So with a more focused attention, with a more controllable intention, more conscious intention. We can begin to change things. We can begin to choose where and how we move, for what purpose, what outcome. And then just letting your arm rest. Coming to rest in what I think of as the top position, not a deep stance, but with your hips just dropping back a little bit. You can see there's a slight curve in my knees there. I haven't got my knees locked back. It'll be the same in my hips. And this is a posture that allows that downward movement and that upward movement to continue with less restriction. If our knees are locked, or if our hips are locked, or if our shoulders are tight, it will block that movement. So a posture that allows a certain amount of space for constant movement. Now, as you stand here, just turn a little bit from one side to another. Going back to that image of the bicycle or the car, once the movement is there, we steer it somehow or another. And the place that we steer through, the part of the body that is like the steering wheel, shall we say, or the handlebars, is this area between hips and waist. The center of the body. Once again, this term center. So when we talk about being centered in Tai Chi, it's not it's not just an image, it's a physical reality. It's that center part of the body that we want to feel is dropping towards the floor. Here is the root. It's the center part of the body that defines where we're actually facing. And we're going to use this in conjunction with our arms. Just bring your hands to your sides. 4 stages to this movement. You push up, just feeling the lengthening through your back and your spine, not too high up, and then coming down again, keeping your hands just a little bit in front of your body. And then push up, and this time let your elbows drop down so you end up pushing out sideways. And as you do that, you turn a little bit. Still aware of that openness in your back. Come back, bring your hands back. Hands coming back to that center part of your body. And then in the other direction. And back. And then finishing the set with a push out, which is called pushing in 4 directions. So first direction is upwards, facing forwards, hands are pushing upwards from the center, expanding out and contracting. Coming back to the center, and again, the expansion from the center, this time turning to give a direction to the arms and back. And then to the other direction and back. And then without turning, so your hands go straight outside. A movement that constantly brings your attention back to that physical center of your body, so that becomes a habitual resting place for your attention. There's just a slight settling period here. And in time, you find that when we're looking for just that little bit of opportunity to settle our attention, maybe when things are getting hectic and we just quieten down a little bit. Once again, we're training ourselves to recognize that we can bring our attention to a resting point, center of the body, and from there down into the ground. This is described in Tai Chi as stillness within the movement. This is one of the really valuable benefits that I think we get from Tai Chi, is that ability to find those little moments of being settled, being calmer, often in the midst of some quite hectic situations. And this is a good exercise to help us to develop that. you'd be still applying that image of moving through water. We're just reminding ourselves of that and seeing, no, sometimes it doesn't take a great effort. We just have to remember, oh, I'm supposed to be moving through. Sometimes we can just feel that our body responds to that almost immediately. That center part of the body is sometimes referred to as the lower dantian. And it's central, not just physically, but in energetic terms. It's here that the energy, sometimes said to be stored, nurtured, this time, let your arms hang down. Just aware of the weight of your arms as they hang from your shoulders. And this time again, expanding in one, or recognizing the expansion in one side of your body. Letting that move your arm outwards, letting it swing up and then straight down. And then, if it's comfortable for you again, with a reference to this center part of the body turning, may draw your arm across a little bit. Rhythm expanding from the center, from the ground beneath you, and then contracting back into that air. Changing sides. Noticing that there may be a difference between one side of our body and another. Not uncommon. And then again, changing. Turn. It's in the center part of your body. Guide your hands into position rather than having to feel that you have to twist around in your back or your shoulder. One more time. Letting your arms rest. And again, with this focus of attention on this center part of your body, tilting your pelvis forwards and backwards. As you tilt forwards, your hips should go back. And then, don't go so far back, but the same idea. If my hips don't go back, I quickly fall over because my center of gravity is going forwards. This way, my center of gravity stays over my legs. And I just got a slight sense of lengthening through my back. We begin to appreciate how the center part of the body not only affects our body horizontally when it rotates, but also has this profound effect on the positioning of our head and our shoulders. And if we can just let our hips drop down, then that would tend to bring our head and shoulders up. So rather than when you're forwards like this, thinking that you somehow have to sort of pull yourself up to strain in your back or your neck, see if you can just allow gravity. It's like somebody's pushed down on that base part of the spine and you just come up. Your pelvis tucks under and that helps to keep your weight in line. If you just simply drop the hips and the pelvis doesn't move, you'll get pulled backwards, of course. So this is quite a tricky operation, and we're going to use this in the next couple of exercises. So once again, a strong reference point is the center of our body and the feeling that it's sinking down to the ground. Now just sink down a little bit, push up. And as you push up, let your arms come out, and then pushing your hips back in the way that we just did. Let's bring your head and shoulders and arms forwards, up and down through your hips and pushing up. Go as far as you're comfortable. I'm trying to do this quite big so you can see what I'm doing, but you could just do it quite small. Be careful of your back and your knees. It's called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. As far as you're comfortable. Remember that one of the very important outcomes we're looking for is to maintain this sense of space with the movement within the body. And if you go too far and stiffen up as a consequence, you're then blocking that movement. So it isn't the case that we always value bigger movements over the smaller movements. You will find that your range of movement will gradually increase. At least that's what I do. So rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. The next exercise combines both the horizontal and the vertical rotation. So bring your hands in front of you, turn to one direction, then push your hips back, swing the hips across to the other side, let them drop down and turn back to them. And then do the same thing in the other direction, turn in, push back, push your hands forwards, swing around, come up, back. On the back, so you can see what my hips are doing. I turn, again, it's exaggerated, pushing back, swinging around, hips dropping down, turning to the floor. Then that just builds, drawing your arms around in a nice smooth circle, settling down in the middle. Once again, a chance just to settle before you move again. So we move, and we just come back to that point of stillness. This is an exercise called polishing the table. Going very carefully. One more time. And snap. I mentioned a couple of times this idea of coming back to a point of stillness. What we're actually encouraged to do is to find that sense of stillness within the movement. Give me one, have a drink. In practice, of course, we lose that quality of stillness all the time. And so it's useful to just, again, have those reference points within the body where we can bring our attention back, so that we make that connection. We kind of come back to base, as it were, on a regular basis. Again, a useful habit to develop. Everybody will lose that focus, will lose that stillness. Tai Chi teaches how to get it back, and I think that's a really valuable thing. With that in mind, so from the parallel stance, feet below your hips, either from the outside of your foot or from the inside of your foot or anywhere in between. So some variation on that. Turn your left foot out, so mirror my movements. Imagine parallel lines going across the floor. Step forwards with your right foot, toes pointing straight forwards. About the same in length as it is in width. and begin to just transfer your weight from one foot to another. Taking a moment just to settle in each time. So rather than going back and saying, I've got to go forwards, you go back and just up. Feel my weight in my foot. You're forwards, feel my weight in my foot. Remember, we're loading the legs, so there'll be a tendency now for my back leg to want to push back. And my intention is to take it forwards. Weight transfer is a very valuable exercise. It's a very important part of our general mobility. It's a key element in Tai Chi. So if you're wanting to develop the art, it's essential that we have a sense of our positioning of our weight. And we can also bring in this association with just that split second of settling, because it's not a long process, and it's really as much to do, not more to do, with our intention to feel our weight in our foot, to recognize that as it is anything physical. And so again, we have these moments when we just touch base. I think of these moments as being like a comma in a sentence, given some kind of reference point, some kind of structure, but not something that really interrupts the flow. And so again, this can be a very valuable skill to learn, a very valuable habit to develop. When we're in a situation and maybe it's a little bit hectic, my first teacher used to talk about standing in the supermarket queues. We learn to bring our attention back. We learn that we don't have to get caught up in the stream of agitation that can sometimes surround us, both externally and internally. These little moments of stillness can be very valuable. And in those moments, we can be just a bit more aware of our physical posture, our relationship to the root, maybe that sense of the platforms of the body, some other model that we established at some point. So again, like the boat that's moored to the seabed, we don't drift totally away. We're brought back. And trying to maintain as much as we can, of course, those qualities in movement. And that's encouraged by moving from the ground, not leaning forward or back. But things are being pushed forwards and backwards by our feet. And let your weight settle back into your back foot. And as you do, raise the front toes. You can turn the front foot forwards, go forwards, let your weight drop down through the hip, pushing your back knee forward so your heel comes up, and then back. So more of your weight beginning to be supported by beginning to flow through your leg. Ideally, we want our weight to drop through the ground, creating that passageway in the way. And again, using that platform image, if I had the pile of books on the floor and I wanted to move it, if I pushed on the top book, it would just collapse. But pushing on the bottom book would move the whole pile more successfully. So again, something that we learn, a habit that we develop in Tai Chi, is an awareness of the ground and to move from the ground rather than feeling that we're somehow tethered to it like a balloon and we're all up there and we're wobbling around all over the place. So this is where again Tai Chi can have a profound effect on our stability. When we're able to drop our weight down, when we're able to maintain a structure that allows that to happen and that brings us more into line over our feet and our legs, then we achieve a certain stability. Now, I use the term stability rather than balance. I think when we're stable, we don't need to balance. So then, bringing your weight back, you bring the foot in, step out, planting the foot, being careful about how you place the foot, and then we notice, and those of you more experienced in Tai Chi would have found this, I'm sure. Some days we can do this and everything's really everything's in line and we're nice and stable and so on and so forth. Other times, maybe not even the day later, maybe next time we did and we're a bit wobbly. Beginning to just appreciate that we're not always stable, but that we can come back and appreciate the role that our minds, our attention and our intention have in that. When we experience this sense of wobbling, if we can return our attention to our feet, there's more chance that we will recover from that. So again, that training of mind and body, that training of the nervous system to enable that uninhibited return of our attention is another one of these habits that we like to develop and shake out. If you are struggling with this and you can't quite get the sense of stability, practice it like this. And even if you don't feel that, and I would recommend to more experienced people that, oh, I don't need this. Actually, it's very interesting to have that support, because quite often you can find that, oh, even though I'm quite stable, I can go further with this. I can release more and so on and so forth. But this gives you a chance with a little bit of support to play with these ideas without the threat of actually falling over. So these are things that we cultivate and develop over a period of time. Now, try that on the other side. First of all, fixed step, just moving the weight. Notice if you've got an urge, oh, we're going to go into stepping. Remember, there are stages to this. Filling and emptying, your weight moving, and the realization that when our weight moves, our body moves. So our weight isn't just this dead thing that occasionally we notice if we stand on a set of scales or something like that. Our weight is a vibrant quality to it, and is a key part of the energetic dynamics within the body when we can start to use it well. And then raising toes and heel. We sometimes refer to this transfer of weight as filling and emptying. And one of the old classics writings in Tai Chi points at this, where it says that the energy in the body moves like the oceans of the world. This liquid feel, and that's a very dynamic image, I think. And then stepping in, taking your time. Notice I put my toes down here. Sometimes I'll do that. Some other times I might feel that I'm able to just raise my leg a little bit. That too is something that is worthy of investigation. Maybe holding on to some support, because sometimes when we raise our leg, we unknowingly throw our body out of line because we're tightening up maybe in hips or buttocks or back. This is an ongoing process. Now just stepping through. So trying to keep the width of your step, and particularly people more experienced in this, when we're planting the foot, be very accurate with your stepping. If you're newer to this, then just use an image. I sometimes refer to this as though you're stepping on thin ice. You want to check that the ice is going to take your weight before you actually move your weight into that leg. Maybe walking on slippery ground, you want to, you don't want to fall over, so you're just being quite careful about it. And shake out. And that's very useful. Sometimes maybe if you're carrying a heavy box or a big bag or something like that, we have to be a bit more careful about how we walk. You can't walk along because you can't quite see. So you're sort of feeling with your feet. Become much more sensitive to what's happening in our feet and our legs than we normally are. Now have your right foot forwards again. So that movement from one foot to that wave-like quality of movement. Bring into our arms, letting your arms hang down beside you, pushing forwards, feeling that wave-like movement, and letting it just push your arms forwards and then coming back, flowing into your arms, from your legs, through your back, the upper body, into the arms. It's a fisherman cast for me. Again, as though you're moving through water. Notice if you have a tendency, again, very common, to lead with your arms, number moving from the ground. And so again, as we settle into the supporting leg, that's when our arms swing past our hips. We're able just again to recognize where our feet are, to recognize the ground beneath our feet. So on, re-establishing once again that sense of stillness within the movement. When you go forwards this time, you turn a little bit to your left. Let that swing your arms out, move a little bit like the wild goose. This is called wind blows the willows. Up and down, feeling the body expanding and turning. Again, you're at the center of your body, guiding that movement in one direction or another, not twisting your back around. Wind blows the willows. Willow tree with its supple wood, deep roots, common image in these zones. That rhythm of expansion and contraction. Okay, change over. So having your left foot forwards, fisherman cast the neck, pushing forwards. And as we grow more experienced and adept at listening to our body, again, just noticing patterns of movement, patterns of expansion and contraction, particularly in the upper part of our body, and learning to bring our intention to those. Often these small changes within the body are much more likely to respond to our minds, to our intentions. And so, for instance, you might find as you go forwards, if you can focus on expanding in certain areas of the body, your arms will move more. We don't have to strain in our arms to move. We build the movement from underneath. Using that awareness of small movements and small changes and our ability to influence them through our minds to enhance the physical movement. Change into wind blows the willows, turning. And again, where would it be best for your body to expand? In your sides, in your belly, in your chest, push your arms out without having to stiffen, without having to strain in our shoulders. Where are the limits to that movement? At what point do we start to stiffen up? We want to try and just stop a little bit before that. We don't want that stiffness, that tightness in our bodies. Now, combine this with the stepping. So forwards or backwards, depending on where you have the room. Go into one leg as you turn and your arms swing out, bringing the foot in and planting out. This is the exercise dragonfly skims the water. And when you've done this a few times with the toes down, then perhaps just able to bring your leg up. Rotation in your hip, again, very careful with that. Keeping that platform of your hips level will help you to remain stable. But if you find that you're tilting, maybe just keep the toes down at this point. Notice how you're bringing the leg up. And then looking back, can you find a way of just releasing in those areas where you feel you're tight? There's leg, do you tighten in the hip? Can you get that feeling of releasing? And then bring the feet back. So for the final exercise, again, coming back very strongly to this feeling of returning. The exercise is called Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain. The mountain is, for me, a lovely image of these qualities of stillness, spaciousness, but also strength being rooted. So encapsulating much of what is important to me about Tai Chi. From the parallel stance, sinking down, pushing up, your arms expanding, and then feeling the pull of gravity on your hips, your shoulders, your elbows, bringing your hands around as though you're holding the ball, and then inwards and downwards again. And an exercise that very much will focus you on that process of returning. And a takeaway from this could be what it is that is most likely to bring you back to that sense of being physically settled, being aligned, bring you back to that sense of the stillness, the spaciousness, the calmness in body and mind. What would be most useful to you later in the day when you're standing in the supermarket queue or whatever, these little frustrations that can build up so much? What would be useful to you to remember at that point? The image of the mountain, the feeling of gravity on your hips, something else. It's a very personal thing at this point. Embrace Tiger, return to that. One more time. And thank you very much for watching and joining in, everybody. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. But now, enjoy the rest of your day.